One of the things that I really loved to read was comic books. All I did was read, collect, and draw comic books. But the fact that I was always reading made me a good student. And the inspiration and motivation to want to read more is I need to understand what Tony Stark's and Professor X and Reed Richards was talking about in these comic books. So it made me pay attention in science. It made me pay attention in social studies. Stan Lee was brilliant, the creator of Marvel comic books, because DC was cool for me, but Gotham and Metropolis was fictional. Stan Lee really put the superheroes in New York. So every time I read a Marvel comic book, I was getting a geography lesson about the real world that I lived in. Long story short, it taught me about Harlem and the Lower East Side and Hell's Kitchens. And across the board, from Pippi Longstocking to Charlotte's Web, what people need to realize is, even though we're reading stories about other characters and individuals, literacy is important to young people because it teaches them about themselves, their emotions, their situations, and their surroundings. So reading comic books, reading Charlotte's Web, reading Pippi Longstocking, and reading all of these books actually taught me about myself, the emotions and everything. And all of that energy and content actually, Ron, went into prepare me to make these records. You know, when you listen to Run-DMC records, I'm the king of rock. There is none higher. I'm DMC in a place to be. It's Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. The way I projected myself on these hip hop records was just like the stories and the emotions and the situations that the people were getting in the book. That's why Run-DMC's music resonated so much. So basically, I'm here because I've been honored and chosen to assist Nickelodeon on what they were already doing to inspire, motivate, educate while entertaining our young people so that they could grow up to be dynamic, purposeful, and potent individuals when they get older. So I guess I kind of represent I'm a perfect example of what happens when literacy is used to empower our young people. There is nothing that they cannot be able to do.
I love that. And it certainly resonates with me because my kids are also super into comics, and they're into Avengers. So cool. And yep. Tony Stark is a very yep. common name in our household. And I have like my 4-year-old, he knows more about New York, like Manhattan and Queens yep. and stuff because yes. the Spider-Man.
See, right. Literacy is so empowering. Like, and it's good that you brought it up. For me, when I found out that Peter Parker, Spider-Man is from Queens like me, so imagine what that did to my morale. Imagine what, and another thing, especially with our kids in certain communities, they don't have access to a lot of the education, a lot of the educational resources that other communities have. That's why books, mm-hmm. comic books, and poetry books should be available 24 hours, 7 days a week for children in certain communities, because even if they're reading about these adventures and these characters, they will see themselves in these individuals. When I was reading the comic books, growing up in Hollis, Queens, I wasn't in a gang. I wasn't with the kids playing hooky. I wasn't rolling with the kids that didn't want to be nice, polite, and educate themselves. So the only time I saw individuals that was like me, that was nerdy, geeky, awkward, and educated, was in the comic books. But in the comic books, these individuals that were nerdy, geeky, but smart, and educated, but awkward, trying to figure out their lives. They had personal things that they wasn't good at like me. So that resonated with me. And that gave me the confidence when I walked out my front door to go to school or to go out on the block and play. I saw individuals like myself. We ain't the best. It's kind of awkward. We're trying to figure life out, but they were super powered. So when me and Peter Parker, it was when I was reading Peter Parker, it was like I was seeing myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you mentioned underprivileged communities and, access to books and reading. And you also mentioned, that you felt a bit different and, maybe you were even made fun of or bullied. How
teased, bullied, and picked
on. Like how do you think we can get more books in the hands of young children, in particular in these underprivileged communities, and kind of, get rid of that stigma of like, it's not cool to read?
Yeah. I mean, it needs to be more, there needs to be more dialogue. There needs to be more interaction. There needs to be more connection with our educational entities. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm noticing, I just did a children's book called Darryl's Dreams with Nickelodeon through Random House. And what I'm noticing is, I'm not the first person to make a children's book, but the teachers and the educators are going ballistic for my book. Mm-hmm. So I see that there's a need, not just because it's DMC. I mean, a lot of the teachers are excited because, oh my God, this is the king of rock in third grade. But when they look at the stories, it's exactly what the children need to read and experience in real time for them in their current situation. So I think what needs to be done is we have to get proactive. You know what I'm saying? We have to be confident enough and courageous enough to take these books and take these comic books and take these graphic novels and introduce them to the schools. And then I think we'll have a victory. I mean, the schools are starving for relevant, up-to-date, relatable material that the kids need to read. And there's so many great writers out there. I mean, all the classics are great. Pippi Longstocking and Charlotte's Web, but a lot of kids in certain communities can't relate to Pippi Longstocking and Charlotte's Web because they don't live on a farm. So when I was doing my book, Darryl's Dream, it's like I said in my rhyme, when these children see and hear a Run-DMC song, they see their mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, and I've been around so long that their grandmothers and grandfathers know about me. So I was giving them, growing up in this hip-hop generation, to their mothers and fathers, they was getting my stories through the music. Son of Byford, brother of Al, Banner's my mother, runs my pal. That's very visual, you know what I'm saying? So in order for me to connect to these kids who do know my music, but they don't know DMC, they just know Tricky because of TikTok. And it's brilliant what Nickelodeon is doing with Noggin. We'll talk about that too. But what I'm saying is, I was like, how do I communicate with these elementary school kids who wasn't even in existence when I was there? They see the result. They see this dynamic man, DMC, that created hip hop and changed the world. How do I show them that I'm not no different from y'all? Y'all could be me. If you remember my first rhyme, DMC and the place to be. I go to, I'm here now, St. John's University. But since kindergarten, I acquired the knowledge. I said, whoa, I gave myself how to start my mission. You see DMC now, the world knew DMC from when I graduated high school to when I hooked up with Run and Jam Master Jay, and we hooked up with Aerosmith to walk this way in Adidas and tell the world how tricky life is. I realized, man, I could tell Darryl was in third grade, Darryl was in kindergarten. So let me put this little DMC Darryl guy in their environment. Ron, our work environments is our families, our work environments, and our friends, right? In our households. It's the same thing for our children. Their environments is their households, their backyards, their blocks, their neighborhood, but also their classrooms and schoolyards. And Ron, believe you me, we are stressed out. This pandemic has did a number on all of mankind, but the kids are going through stress too. Their stress is peer pressure and bullying and getting teased and picked on and, feeling down because they didn't they got a C instead of getting an A like the smartest kids in the class. So I was like, let me put DMC, a real life person, into their world. And I don't want them to see the greatness of DMC and Run-DMC. I want to see the potential and the greatness is that in them. So literacy, the reason why you like Luke Skywalker and the reason why you like the Powerpuff Girls and the reason why you like Tony, the reason why you like all of these adventures, there's situations and emotions that you can relate to in these literal literally in these literary creations. So it's the key, it's imperative for us to be proactive and start introducing books that we as adults discover that we think would be phenomenal for our children. Children just don't read literacy. Children experience literacy.